The difference between change and transition is it's one thing to figure out what needs to change and then do it. It's another thing to actually get people to buy into it and actually feel good about it and adopt it as their own. Now, just because it's internal or psychological doesn't mean it's touchy-feely. We're not going to get naked here today or sing songs or hold hands. That class costs a lot more money than I'm being paid today to do. There is an analytical process to this, but it has to be understood that transition is a psychological internal process, because it doesn't matter how many wonderful compensation plans you put in place. It doesn't matter how you deal with performance-based compensation and stock awards to executives. If you don't get them to embrace the philosophy behind it, the change is a waste of time and money. So we're going to talk today about a structure for actually getting people to move along with your changes, not just for implementing them in a discrete fashion. We all can kind of imagine that endings are about loss, but I think the really important way to look at this is even positive change in our lives is about loss. Statistics have shown, psychologists have done studies and shown that positive change in our lives produces just as much anxiety and just as much loss as negative change. What are we talking about? So it's easy to design a change process. You know, what's the need for that? Well, we're not paying people based on performance, we're not getting performance, and we're paying money even when we're not making money. Easy to understand the need. Okay? What's the solution? Well, we'll go to a performance-based system and you work out all the numbers. What are the impacts of that? Well, we're going to have to explain it, we're going to have to change our comp systems and our plans. Then you plan it, then you implement it. Now, all of you do those things. The difference between the world-class organizations here in this room and the ones that are not world-class is your ability to actually get the executives to get their hands around this and embrace it as their own. That is hard. That's what transition is about. When I first started teaching this class, I really couldn't get a grasp, a good example of someone who had experienced every one of these losses due to a change in their lives. So I came up with the example you're probably all expecting, and that's my mother. My mother is an empty nester. Any empty nesters here in the room? Yes, a number of empty nesters. So you'll be able to relate to this. The kids have all left home and moved to a different town, so it's just my mom and dad at home. My dad has the same job, and my mom was a full-time mom for over 30 years. Okay? Somebody in the audience, and speak up loud so I can hear you, somebody tell me what you think the single most difficult thing for my mom to adjust to in terms of a loss when the kids were moved out of the house. Meaning. Someone said meaning. Very big. Obviously, her meaning was very clear to her for many years. What else? Identity is huge. In fact, my mom had to go down to the Hall of Records to find out she did, in fact, have a first name. You know, 30 years, my dad and all the kids called her Mom. You know, she didn't even respond to her first name anymore. What else? Structure is actually number one. A lot of people say attachments, and attachments is big. Obviously, AT&T is her attachment to us now. Control is big because she had very direct influence over us before, and now it's pretty much relegated to a little guilt over the phone every week. She's learning to make that work for her, though. Let me just say that. Her sense of the future, think about when she first had children 30 years ago. She was not even thinking about a day when the future would look like not being a mom. So her sense of the future has just been rocked. But the most important thing that she has lost is structure. And let me tell you why I know that. I'll call home and talk to my mom. I call her from time to time, quite often, I guess. And I'll call her from work, and it'll be the middle of the day, and I'll say, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, God, I'm running around. I'm so busy." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll take that bait." "So what are you doing, Mom?" She says, "I'm doing laundry." I say, "Mom, I called you yesterday and you were doing laundry." "I know, every day." I say, "Mom, you and Dad wear the same clothes for 3 days in a row. I know it." "What are you washing?" And you know, I just picture this lone sock in there tumbling around the dryer, my mom looking in on it. Then I was getting ready to do a presentation like this to 100 people at a management conference that we were having, and my mom called the night before and gave me some great material. She said, "Pat, you know what today is, don't you?" And I said, "What, Mom?" And she said, "It's the first day of school." And I thought, what, is she going back to junior college or something? And she said, and I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Kids are going back to school today. It's September. I just feel like buying back the old Chevy station wagon, driving over to Our Lady of Perpetual Help School, and hanging out in the parking lot when the kids come out." I said, "Mom, they're going to arrest you if you do that." Has anyone here, who was married most recently in life? Somebody fess up. Ah, okay, good. How long ago? A month ago. Can you go to that mic behind you? This is perfect. You're sitting by Mike. Anthony, can we get that mic to work? Let's give her a round of applause.
But if there's anybody more recent, they have to stand up.
What's that?
If there's anybody who got married more recently, they have to stand up.
Yeah. No, I think you're going to be the one. So, I'm going to ask you a question, and it's been just a month, so you're probably still in that state of bliss that wears off after a while. But what on this list can you relate to as having a loss? What have you lost as a result of being married? Believe me, your husband would give an answer by now.
Control.
What's that?
Control.
Control. Explain what that means. Share with us, if you will.
Well, trying to figure out things like what we're doing with joint accounts and just kind of structure of our day and how we want to spend it and what we want to do with our time.
Right. No question of that before. Control. How about turf? I imagine you gained turf in the deal probably, right?
Actually, not much change there.
Yeah, I lost turf, I tell you that. The bathroom, I'm renting pieces of that every morning for a while. That's about it. Does anyone here know who Viktor Frankl is? Man's Search for Meaning. That's right. Man's Search for Meaning was his first book. He survived Dachau and Auschwitz. Everyone in his family but one of his sisters was killed. Okay? And the prison guards who watched him, I think it was at Dachau, wrote in their journals after the war that they couldn't break this guy. You know, there was this one prisoner they couldn't break, and they couldn't understand it. And so then we learned about why they couldn't break him after the war, because based on his memory and scraps of paper in his cell, he reconstructed that he wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. One of the primary things that he discovered in this book, that he wrote about, was that no matter what happens to you in life, no matter what people take away from us, and think about it, everything got taken away from him. The one thing that people cannot take away from you is your ability to respond to the loss. You ultimately are responsible for choosing your response to loss. Now that might sound ethereal or pretty optimistic, but the fact is if it worked for him, you can just imagine when something happens in our life how we might respond to it. Ceremonies and symbols are very important. Let me tell you a couple of examples. At Sybase, the first group of people I ever took through this was an organization that was moving from one warehouse to another. Now that might not sound terribly traumatic, but the places where we live and work, moving people from an office to a cube is traumatic. We all know that, right? We've been through that. So they were moving from one warehouse to the other, and the warehouse was full of all these young people who were right out of school, and they wore tie-dyed shirts to work, and they had rock music blaring. They were moving out of this little homey warehouse where they'd all kind of grown up together, so to speak, to a new ISO 9000 warehouse, with all the laminated tape everywhere, and it just very, very sterile. And they were bummed out about it. They were really having a difficult time. So the leader of the organization was enlightened enough to say, hey, they should design their own ending ceremony for the move. So here's what they did. They're kind of a modeling group of people. When the warehouse was empty, they went in one day and they took crime tape from the Emeryville Police Department, we're located in Emeryville across the bay, and they roped off the building like a crime scene. Then they went inside and they did chalk outlines of their bodies on the floor and on the walls, like there'd been this big murder. Then they all signed their names, had a little funeral ceremony, proceeded over to the new warehouse, and had a party. Now, can't you just see the CFO sitting there, what in the hell do I pay these people to do? But the fact is, the leader of that group said, if I don't let them celebrate this now, if I don't let them have some fun and some sadness, and there was sadness there, in ending that, they're never going to feel that clean sense of break. Go to anybody in that organization and say, do you remember the day you moved out of the warehouse? They say, sure. We had that wacky ceremony. Ceremonializing things is important. Anyone can design a system that supports performance-based compensation, but how many people can really help people make the break from the old? It's not incremental. You've got to take a day and say, today's the day. Because think about it, what's an executive going to lose when they go from an entitlement-based, pretty much not much leverage, mostly compensation, mostly base salary, and MBOs that they're pretty much used to getting, to a system that's based on performance? What are they losing? A little bit of control over how much money they earn in some ways, a little bit of structure in their lives, maybe some future where they kind of saw their salary going up like this, and it might actually go like this and like this and like this. Realize that they're resisting it, not because they don't like change. Intellectually, they all know you got to go to performance-based compensation. They're resisting it because they have to lose something, and they have to decide how they're going to respond to that. Help them by ceremonializing it. When people are in the neutral zone, if you get them to abandon the old system and you take them out into the neutral zone and give them no guidance, there's a number of things they might do. In a company, in an organization, sometimes they argue to go back to the old way. We've all seen that, right? The devil you know versus the devil you don't. People will select something that is certainly bad over something that's uncertain. They will take certainty over uncertainty even when they think it might be better. The second thing they might do is they might decide they want to quit. Companies lose people all the time in the neutral zone because they don't bother to help them get through it. Finally, the worst thing, the very worst thing that can happen in your organizations when you're taking people through a change and you don't give them what they need in the neutral zone, remember, the period after they've abandoned the old, is they quit and stay. They decide they're going to hang out, but they're not going to help things move forward. They get cynical, they go to meetings, they drag their feet. You all know what that looks like. So what do you do to help people use the neutral zone as a time of productivity and creativity, and not as a time of fear and uncertainty? Then I found out the hard way how this works. Because my wife, again, was in the middle of a transition. And she had just started a new job, and yet she came home after like a week in the new job, and she said, I don't think they get me yet. I don't think they understand why they hired me. They seem to get it during the interview, but now they're not utilizing me the right way, and I just don't think this is working out. Classic beginning of the neutral zone kind of thing. Classic beginning of the neutral zone kind of thing. So, anybody here read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Raise a show of hands. Yeah, I've never read it, but I've had parts of it read to me. And so I learned about the importance of this because my wife came home and said, Pat, they just don't understand me. This isn't going to work out. So, ladies, tell me, what did I do? I tried to fix it. I tried to solve the problem, right? I go to the kitchen where I keep my overhead projector at home, and I get it out, and I'm drawing the org chart of a new organization. I'm saying, you know, Laura, if you talk to this guy right here and get this stuff worked out with him, I think, and I turn around, she's got tears in her eyes. I say, what's wrong? And again, ladies, what did she say back to me? Just listen to me. You don't understand. I just want you to maybe even give me a hug. Oh! And so being the like male that I am, I say exactly the right thing. Hey, listen, if you don't want my solution, why do you ask? It works, you know. You just do this.